All right, g'day. Welcome back to Collectivitis, podcast where we dissect the disease that is collectivism. My name's Pietro. This is Floyd. How you doing, Floyd?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. Thanks. We haven't done an episode with just the two of us in
Yeah,
a fair while. We had one with the three of us with Max, and then I've had a couple of guests on lately. But
too
um,
too busy interviewing David Limbrick. I mean, that was a good episode to watch.
yeah. It's just I think I'm too big a deal for you now, Floyd.
I
I'm.
reckon.
No, David was great, and a couple of those interviews I've been trying to line up for a while, and it just so happened that they happened within like a week of each other, which means that we
Nice.
haven't had time to talk about I don't think we've done an episode since Joe Biden actually stepped down. The,
No.
the most recent one we did, I think, was Trump getting shot and Joe
Mm,
Biden being the opposition. So, I guess we'll get to talk a little bit about Kamala and all of that today.
mm.
Um, but the other big thing that is happening, I mean, there's lots of big things that we could talk about, but the other big thing that I we probably should talk about are these riots going on in the UK, which started over from, and I think you know more about this than I do. To be honest, confession time here. I
Yeah,
don't give too much of a fuck about the UK. Um, I know
fair.
it's kind of unpopular, like especially for Australians, you're meant to align with the UK more than America, I guess. But um, I've I don't I don't have anywhere near the interest that I have for US politics as I do for
Mhm.
UK politics. So I don't really know as I don't have my head wrapped around it as much as I probably should. Um, from what I understand, it's an immigration thing. It started from there's a lot of discontent with immigration there, just like everywhere else in the world. A lot of Europe is going through that right now as well. We're probably, I mean, immigration is starting to become talked about here in Australia as well, and we're
Mm.
probably one of the furthest from that being like the most important issues. In other places, it's
Yeah.
getting to like real fever pitch levels of importance. And over there, so there was a murder of a couple of young girls or something by someone who was the son of migrants, and they were born in Wales. In the end, it came out, and I think what it kind of shows it's not necessarily the the moment that sparked these riots. That was just the spark that fanned the flames that were already
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
right? So that
The
that
straw
just
that
blew the
broke the
whole.
camel's back.
I was trying to use another analogy because everyone always uses
Nah, that's a
straw.
great. You can't go past that. For the diggers. That's how you do it.
The spark that fanned the flames that were already there. That's what I went with, which
Yeah.
doesn't even make sense because if the flames are already there, then the spark doesn't matter. But
No, but
anyway,
you. Well, maybe the spark. Yeah. Anyway, the
the
I was just
match
gonna
that
say I'm
lit
not.
the kerosene
Yeah,
bottle.
yeah.
Anyway, let's straw that broke the camel's back. So now there's all these riots over there about the fact that immigrants commit crimes, a lot of violent crimes. You can't talk about it because otherwise you're a racist. And there's
You
also
go
some
to jail.
discussion. Well, now you
Yeah,
actually go to
yeah.
jail as well. Uh, Racists in jail. That's where they belong. Chuck all the racists in jail. Um, and yeah, well, that's essentially the crux of it. And these riots have been going on for a while. What is it, like a week or two now, that they've been
Yeah.
heating up?
I think longer than that.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't know. It
so
depends when did it start, I guess. When do you kind of delineate between a protest and a riot?
yeah, okay. That's too philosophical for me. Whenever the
Okay.
murder happened, I don't see. I don't even know the
Yeah.
exact date. It feels like it's been going on for a couple of weeks as of what's today, the 11th
Yeah.
of August. So anyway, that's the general gist of the story, and we can dig into it a little bit. Um, I'll just play a short clip from ABC showing you what the the standard
Oh,
Australian
great.
media opinion on this whole thing is. So this is what you're
Yeah.
meant to think according to the mainstream, and then we can tell you what you should actually be thinking. So we will also tell you what to think, but in our case, we are correct.
I'll give you the no. I will give you the choice. The illusion of choice. How about that?
So yeah, here's your illusion of choice. Well, we'll show you the other one first.
Messiah!
After more than a week of riots, a reckoning. Of the more than 600 people arrested, 150 have now faced court.
You have been committed for sentence 8 months imprisonment, 18 months imprisonment, 20 months imprisonment. Those are the sentences.
This body camera footage shows police arresting a 69-year-old who'd armed himself with a wooden bar and joined the violence in Liverpool last week. He's been sent to prison for 2 years. Jordan Parler became the first person jailed over a social media post linked to the riots. He encouraged people to attack a hotel housing asylum seekers.
This offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable.
Police are worried tensions will again escalate as the football season begins.
We have to stay on high alert going into this weekend because we absolutely have to make sure that our communities are safe.
The riots started after 3 children were killed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in England's northwest last week. Far-right social media accounts circulated false claims the alleged attacker was an asylum seeker when he was born in Wales. The UK is now reviewing online misinformation laws.
These opportunists are waiting to pounce on something that they can use to legitimize their hatreds and to direct the fury of people that they've been building up for a long time.
Migration was a major and divisive issue in the UK's election last month. Experts say far-right groups in the UK and abroad are looking for opportunities to exploit those divisions.
Amongst the far right, you do see groups who are celebrating it as a example of the kind of street fighting that they want to see more. And, you know, this is not just in the UK, it's very much internationally. In the US, Europe and Australia, I've seen accounts who are very much promoting this as Britain's fighting back and something that they want to see imported into their own context.
Authorities are hoping their swift and severe crackdown will deter further aggression. Michelle Rimmer, ABC News, London.
All right. Well, I mean, there's a lot there. Let me make a stupid sort of sidebar point first before I'll let you have a go at this one in proper have an actual response to it. But they talk there about they're like they want to sort of dissipate these tensions before the football season starts. Like as if the notion that like football supporters are kind of like hooligans and they would be part of this alt-right or generally right-wing leaning ideas. And it's probably true, right? It's probably true that football fans do lean that way. I mean, if you look at in the US, the UFC is like one big Trump rally every time they have a night, right? Everyone there tends to be, I don't know, 95% of the people there probably are right wingers, and they're all chanting Trump. And the fighters often at the end will talk about Trump, and Dana White talks about how Biden's retarded and all this shit. And the UFC kind of leans into that, but in the UK, like while many of the football supporters probably are the same, because it's like a bloke thing. Like generally, if we talk generalizations, we know that men tend to vote right wing, women tend to vote liberal more often than not. Massive generalization, but the blokes that go to watch the football are going to be mostly right wingers, you would imagine. But the UFC leans into that, whereas the Barclays, it's not even called the Barclays Premier League, whatever it's called, the Premier League in the English Premier League, they're the most woke, like left corporate organization that you can imagine. When there was the like they've had all their captains wear like rainbow flag captain's armbands, and they have, when it's Gay Pride Month, and they have Gay Pride corner flags, and for like a month. During the Black Lives Matter protests, which I see as a very interesting comparison to this, because they're both basically come out of the same thing, right? Is a view that the police is not acting correctly or fairly or justly. There was this one moment of violence that has sparked a greater conversation, and it's basically a race-based movement that's trying to gain some attention. In that case, it was black people against police brutality. This time it's white people predominantly against mass migration from third world countries especially. But the Premier League, when that happened, they replaced everyone's surnames on their back of their shirts with Black Lives Matter for like a month. And for like a year, they did like a minute of kneeling in silence before the games. because that protest was allowed. That was one of the protests that are allowed, and it was actually uh, fomented by the media and all the powers that be in the governments. And it actually, I don't know if you remember, it paused the pandemic. The worst pandemic in all of
Okay.
our lifetimes actually got put on pause for a while there because you were allowed to go out and smash shit in the US. You
Oh
were allowed
yes,
to go
yeah,
out.
that. I thought you were talking about when soccer was on. I'm like, wow, okay.
No. That's it was nowhere near powerful enough for that. But in the US, yeah, it paused the pandemic. Just like eventually Russia's invasion of Ukraine finally ended the pandemic,
Mm.
which we can thank Putin for. But just that comparison of like the way the Premier League in England is like a slave to all the corporations, all the fucking dumb woke interest groups, and the
Kind of like the
UFC being.
AFL here.
Yeah, I don't know too much. Is the AFL the same
Yeah,
here?
yeah, it's getting more and more a bit kind of cringe to
Yeah.
look at. Yeah.
Anyway, that was a stupid point. I'll let you have an
Well,
actual.
no, I'm just going off that. It kind of negates the idea that soccer is the world game. Shouldn't it be bringing people together? But no, I understand. I understand that in a sense because you have a lot of like the chavs and the lad type of people being portrayed. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what you see. So I mean, aren't they supposed to be the hooligans and all that type of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I guess that's what they're kind of making a point of like, hey, all the hooliganism around
Yeah.
football, we need to stop it before those
like,
hooligans also get onto this. Well, it's probably the
If
same
only
guy.
they just launch flares and punch each other up.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's just it's okay when they do that. It's just we
Yeah.
don't like it when it's got a political message behind it. Anyway, I think you probably have done a little bit more. What are your thoughts on this whole UK riots thing?
Yeah.
What's the read?
Well, one thing I just want to know who the far right are. They always talk about this idea of the far right, and they never describe who these people are and kind of like what their viewpoints. I guess they're against immigration. But yeah, it'd be really great if you could just tell us who the far right are, so I can find them and I can be like, that person's far right, as opposed to just think that everyone is far right who doesn't say that they're not.
Yeah, well, far right can mean whatever they want it to mean. I mean,
Yeah.
like far right was, by some definitions, there was like some, I can't remember exactly what it was in the US. This is, but there were like some terrorist groups that they like domestic terrorist watch list groups that they outlined, and one of the symbols was the Gadsden flag, was like a terrorist. And like libertarians or anarchists, anarcho-capitalists were listed as like in domestic terrorists. Like that's the far right. If they like, by none of our definition for libertarianism would we be far right, but they can just choose, like they just make it whoever is not going with the mainstream. Remember when the CFMU, I know we just spoke with David Limbrick about the CFMU. You were remembering the protests back in 2021 against the vaccine mandates. On the radio on the way home from those protests, after having walked among some of the most diverse crowd I'd ever been a part of, the one thing many of them had in common was that they hated cops, which I can understand. But then, far right, these were far right extremists because they didn't want a vaccine. That was far right as well, right? That's now fascism. Fascism is not what Hitler and Mussolini did. It's now not the vaccine.
They don't say fascism because then it's kind of putting them into a hole, and they turn around and they say, well, actually, we don't kind of believe in that stuff. And it's like, oh crap. So I guess the far right's that blanket term, and that's what pisses me off about it. Is it's just this blanket term, and because you can't say they're people that have those funny little crosses on their lapels or their shoulders or wherever. You can't say that they're fascists. You can't say that they're whatever the term is you want to describe them as. So hey, let's just call them far right. But I guess into that, the kind of suggestion is that there's going to be a fascist overthrow, like Oswald Mosley has come back and he's going to overthrow Britain, and this is what's going to happen, and you better rise up against this, or you better fight against it, because these people are just going to totally take the government away, which I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I've been looking at what's on Twitter, and that's about it. And it seems to be people that are just pissed off with how Britain's being run. You know, they're just pissed off with the government, and that they think that there is like they say two-tier in all the hashtags, and that's the idea, is that there's an us versus them mentality, and they're not getting treated the same. There's the equality isn't in Britain anymore.
So run me through, what is it that they see as two-tier a little bit? Because so is it the way that the police treat people? Is it something broader than that? What do they mean when they say two-tier?
Yeah, I think it's around policing.
Okay.
Right, and I think it's that old thing about like culture, like the British culture isn't being celebrated, but you know, the immigrant culture, whatever those cultures are, they a lot of people specifically say Islam is being like celebrated, whereas everyone else, well, the British culture, doesn't matter if you're white, doesn't matter if you're whatever, that is just going down the toilet. I don't know how true that is, but policing is probably one of the big things that they specifically will say on Twitter, at least.
Yeah, something that I feel might be more true about Britain than necessarily here. I don't know. I feel like Australians on the whole are more susceptible to brainwashing for whatever reason. We're a younger country, but in England, and I've been to England a few times, so I'm not I'm saying this with very little experience, but like this is kind of my read a little bit. Is that they kind of have more of a underlying understanding of what being British is, because it's been around for a much longer time than us. And this complete, like the complete propagandizing of, we must accept everyone. We cannot have this white British culture is toxic. Everyone needs to be gay and LGBTIQ and rainbow flags on everything and all that shit, I think feels more manufactured in Britain than it does in, say, here or even in America. I mean, America's a lot younger than Britain as well. There is very much this kind of, I get the feeling that there is a huge chunk of the population there which is really like, this does not represent me in any way. But it's just the powers that be, like the government corporations, the big multinational corporations especially, pump so much money into these ideas that it's like, well, okay. And I remember I saw this video which I think sums it up pretty well. It's like there's this guy who's he's in like a high vis jacket and he's putting up a bunch of pride flags across the middle of the road, for some pride demonstration or something. And this guy who's taking the video, this other guy taking the video, is like, "What the fuck are you doing putting that shit up there? Take it down." And I think he's replacing a British flag with a pride flag to do it.
Okay,
So it's extra inciting. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you putting that shit up for? Blah blah blah. And the guy who's putting it up is like, responds saying, "You think I want to be doing this shit? I'm getting paid." And I think that kind of encapsulates how I look at it all. Like they're all just doing what they have to because, to keep their bosses happy and to keep the fucking mainstream that wants to push these issues happy. And you all pretend to, but underneath, like this underlying culture, I think is kind of what's showing a little bit now, is like, well, actually, hey, it shouldn't be racist to say that we want to keep this culture that we've had for thousands of years somewhat homogenous. It shouldn't be racist to say that we aren't being treated equally, even though we're white. We're white. We can't say that we're not being treated equally. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is, but the wording of it's a bit funny when they say it's like, we want to celebrate like white culture. It's like,
it sounds wrong because we've been so propagandized.
Exactly.
Wrong. But we have, look at the juxtaposition of the two. Like we have a Black Pride Month for a month of every year. We have a Gay Pride, LGBTQ Pride Week or month or whatever the fuck we have. But to say something like white pride just like gives you like this dirty feeling, or to say like straight pride, like it sounds so wrong. But I think, in a vacuum, it doesn't. It's just because we've been so trained to think that that's like that.
Yeah. But maybe it should be country specific as well, because, a lot of people, or a lot of like non-white people, I guess, even white people, they always will say like country culture or like a specific type of culture as opposed to just blanket. I don't hear people say like Asian pride. they'll be like, well, it's Vietnamese pride or Chinese pride or whatever, stuff like that. So maybe British pride might be the correct thing, or American pride or whatever.
Yeah, US,
Because I
USA.
mean,
They
like,
they
yeah,
can't. Sorry, you go.
yeah, it's just white people are so fucking diversified. It's like, do I want to be? I kind of sometimes look out the window and it's like, I'm not really proud of that fucking person.
Yeah, well, that's true, but like, I mean, is Black Pride not the same thing? Like the whole continent of Africa plus every country that has a black population has a different idea of what black culture is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how is Black Pride? Is that not exactly the same thing?
Well, I think when they say that, it's specifically African American.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's what
No,
I
fair
get.
enough. Fair
I
enough.
don't think when it's Black Pride they're saying like, yeah, you know, Zambia and, you know, Morocco and, you know, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair enough. Another point I wanted to make was that, and I've heard this raised a few times from not from the mainstream media, from critics of the mainstream media and all of this, is just like the such obvious double standards with this stuff is that you can't advocate for like a homogenous society, like to say anything against the idea of multiculturalism being the best thing in the world. And in Australia, like we have a pretty good example of how multiculturalism can be very advantageous and very and quite work well and have positives and stuff like that. But it's not like it necessarily has to. Like it's forced multiculturalism of two cultures that cannot coexist and cannot live in harmony. And we see that like there's two wars happening around the world right now. Should multiculturalism occur across those borders? Like are those good examples of multi? It's not like it's a de facto good no matter what, no matter where, no matter anywhere. And a lot of, as you said, I think a lot of the British one is specifically geared towards Muslim immigration, which is a very different society. It's a very different view of the world, and it changes the culture, right? And it's seen as you can't talk against it, and as soon as multiculturalism has to be good. But the glaring example of an occasion where it's a country very specifically fights against multiculturalism is with Japan. Japan is extremely stringent with their rules for gaining Japanese citizenship. It's almost never given to anyone who's not Japanese. Like it's a million hurdles to try and attain it. They try to keep their society as homogenous as they can because they're a tiny island and they want to keep the fact that they're Japanese and Japanese people have a culture and it remains the same as it's been for hundreds and thousands of years. And there's no one in the world criticizes Japan's immigration policy. You can imagine if there were boats that started moving to Japan from, I don't know, if they were more geographically close to somewhere that sends boats because they're not super close to non-Asian countries that have boats. But you can imagine if they turned the boats away, which they certainly would, because when we don't want non-Japanese people in Japan, we want Japan to remain Japanese. No one would bat an eyelid, but it's all the rest. It's the Western world who coincidentally, the massive state gains an advantage from third world people coming in because they get to expand the welfare state and they get to expand the voter base for broadly left-wing pro-big government policies that they're the ones that have to take everyone who comes to their shores. And if you're against everything for refugees or encouraging refugees or every sort of migration in the world, you're a bigot and a piece of shit. Of course, we're the ones who pay the bills, not the government. They take our money to pay the bills. It's easy to be virtuous with other people's money. Anyway, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's valid.
Cool. All right. Well, is that? I guess that's kind of the crux of what we had to say about the UK. Stuff. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? I know you've looked into it a little bit more than I have. Is there anything that we've missed? How do you think this ends? I don't know if I agree with you that it's going to be that they're going to I think what did you say before? You said something like they're going to overthrow the government or they're going to do something like that.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the that was more the suggestion of the media, like these far right fascists will do it. I think there's going to be some sort of bullshit reconciliation, or people just kind of get oppressed. They'll get even more pissed, I don't know how it's going to end. Honestly, I just think this is just propaganda on all sides, and I don't know what to believe. But I definitely don't believe the media about all of this. So
Yeah, well, I mean the power of the imbalance between the power that these rioters have and the power of what the state has is so,
mm,
you know, it's so there's such an enormous difference. Like there's only one way this will eventually end. Like yes, potentially they clamp down and this creates more anger and more people revolt and the riots go on for a little bit longer, but eventually the government has the power to crush these people. And you can already see it now. Like they're bringing in, oh, what do you know? They're bringing in laws where they can arrest you for saying things
mm,
online. And there's now a whole new push on the campaign against misinformation and disinformation.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
oh, what do you know? Everything that grows state power is growing because of this. So as much, I mean, look, I hope the riots do keep going because I like any sort of anger and discord aimed at the government. They deserve everything they get. But even in saying that, like they will manipulate this to attain more power because the state, if you do nothing, the state gets more power. If you fight against
yeah.
the state gets more power. There's
Well,
no.
you know how it's probably going to end? It's probably going to end with these people thinking that, an election is going to get them out of it or
Well, they
something.
just
And
had an
just,
election, so I mean,
yeah,
they're the furthest away from even getting to do
but
that,
still,
getting
but
to do
that
something.
idea, of like, well, voting's going to save us when it's like, nah, guys, like, come on. Because I mean, Britain's pretty statist anyway. Even these, far right people, they're quite
Yeah,
statist
yeah,
people.
yeah,
They love their welfare and
yeah.
the NHS and all that type of stuff. So
Yes, yes. They're not going to have a libertarian awakening because
yeah,
of this.
yeah.
They're, like their solution is to have a massive government that just kicks out all the migrants and
Yeah, more laws that
Yeah,
clamps down everything and makes it
exactly.
more fair as opposed to just take away the laws and let fairness sort itself out.
Yes, yes. And I suppose like the broader libertarian point here, I suppose, is that um these people, their anger is kind of misdirected because they're angry at the government um, for not stopping these people from coming in. What they should be angry at and angry about is the fact that, in the absence of people having entirely private property where a society could decide who to let in and who to let out on an individual basis, and the anarcho-capitalist view of the world and all of that, the government takes the role of allowing who gets to go in and who gets to go out,
Mm,
and they allow everyone in while at the same time forcing this enormous welfare state, which impoverishes everyone and creates other things like the housing crises all around the world,
mm.
including Australia, is also fueled by this. Um, they won't leave housing to a free market, but they'll import all these people who have nowhere to live, creating a far worse housing crisis in
To
the process.
build the houses, but because they don't need to stay anywhere, they can stay in the streets.
Well, but like building houses is harder because of regulations, and they remove the free
Yeah.
market from these equations. So, like, the government is both to blame for the problem and the fact that they won't allow a solution to occur. So, this anger is kind of misdirected because if the government did nothing, there would be a solution in either direction.
Mm.
And anyway, that's kind of the libertarian insight into all of this. I think. Um, all right, let's talk about Kamala Harris.
Yes, yes, the fun part.
Um,
Ready for a laugh, a bit of a cackle?
A bit of a cackle, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll be hearing a lot of cackling in the coming months, I am certain. What do you make of the whole? So, if case anyone's been living under a rock, Joe Biden was super unpopular, tanking in the polls. He got strong-armed into not running as the Democratic candidate. There are huge I don't even know if they're conspiracies. They're pretty realistic, the fact that because he was saying he would run, he would run, he would run, he would run, and then all of a sudden he announced in a tweet that he wouldn't run and
Mm,
wasn't seen on camera for like 2 weeks after that. And when Kamala Harris did like her first or one of her first interviews, talking about how she was the de facto candidate, he phoned in and didn't appear on camera. And like
mm,
the voice sounded odd, and there was all this like rife with possibilities for conspiracy. I would say I am certain, beyond reasonable doubt, that Joe Biden was strong armed into this by the Democratic Party,
mm,
which means that the Democratic Party in the US has overthrown the democratically elected candidate by the people, which was Joe Biden, if you go by their primaries, and installed someone who nobody has voted for as the candidate now going against Trump. So, Kamala Harris, there it is. So that's without even talking about her herself, but they've the party that's talking about saving democracy completely overturning democracy. And so now it's Trump versus Kamala Harris. And I guess the interesting part of all of that is that Kamala has somehow been rebranded as this like fantastic killer candidate who has also seen a surge in the polls to the point where now, if you believe the polls, they're about even, Trump and Kamala Harris, where there's a 50-50 chance of either of them winning. So what do you make of all of this, especially on it like the Kamala, the makeover that she's had done by the by the powers that be?
Yeah, I think honestly this is just a big dick swing from the Democrats. They must have a great marketing and PR team, because it's just like, I think it's more a show of force. It's just to say to the Republicans, hey, this is what we can do. This isn't going to be Sleepy Joe. You've got something, prepare for a tough fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I read into it slightly differently. I think like this, I don't know that they're necessarily sending a message to Republicans. I don't think they give two fucks about Republicans really,
Well,
other
to
than
the
the fact
party,
that they,
saying more so than Republicans, but to the party saying, hey, you've got a force to deal with. Be prepared, up your game, type of thing.
well, but the thing is, right? So, that would be true if she were a force to be reckoned with, if she were a decent candidate, and therefore, actually someone that the Republicans should be worried about. And here, look at this media campaign we can push. I think that what I see of the situation is more that like this is so Joe Biden, they were almost propping up Joe Biden to getting like 30, 40, 45% of the vote, and he was a corpse, right? Now they have someone who is not a corpse, but is not a good candidate by any stretch of the imagination. In 2020, when she ran for president against Joe Biden, she got knocked out before the Iowa primaries, which is like the first one where if you're serious, you're in. And she got smashed in debates by Tulsi Gabbard, who called her out for a whole host of things, including the fact that she deliberately ignored evidence that would let people out of jail for like marijuana crimes and things like that, and then went on to laugh when she was asked if she herself had ever smoked marijuana. Like, this is a piece of shit which the Democrats thoroughly rejected in 2020. Like, they thoroughly rejected her. She was completely annihilated. She didn't even get into like the top 8 of that final debate stage. The only reason she's in the conversation is because Joe Biden needed to pick a black woman to be his VP to garner part of the black vote, which, interesting that she's black now, considering she was Indian when she first ran. Like, that was how she campaigned. She campaigned as an Indian for her first Senate ticket.
Jamaican as well, as just to put that in.
No, I know, but she marketed herself as an Indian, and now she's marketing herself as a proud black woman because she needs to win the black vote. So she, I get what you're saying. Like, there is
What's
part
the
of
whole
that.
idea of the facelift, though? And I mean,
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, marketing, the whole idea of marketing is to create value, and that's what's happening. You're creating the value in Kamala.
Well, and that's what I mean, right? Like, this is the Democratic Party taking probably the worst candidate next to Joe Biden, and not just the Democratic Party, but all of the media and the establishment that goes with them. And this is showing just how powerful that alone is without anyone even close to impressive. And that's without even going into the fact that, like, Kamala Harris has all these problems, even without going into the fact that she cannot talk in front of a camera, almost at all. Like, she, in a scripted speech, she goes okay, but anytime she's going off the cuff, she does those rambling circular talks that sound really condescending and really patronizing, and she sounds like an idiot. She sounds like she just fell out of a coconut tree. Um, that's a reference to something she said, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. It's not. I'm not. Anyway, and so it's a show of just how, like, if she manages to get up with as the horrific candidate she is, we're not talking of Barack Obama, who genuinely inspired some level of support and was inspiring himself and like genuine grassroots interest. We're talking someone who is completely manufactured. Like they have just invented the next in line that they needed, who was a DEI diversity hire pick to be the vice presidential candidate in the first place. And now she's the next in line, and they are going to swing this enormous machine. And if she gets up, like that is just an indication that the machine is more powerful than anything else in America, even Trump with a bullet in the ear. And if that's the case with someone as weak as Kamala Harris and someone as universally, like, has such a huge populist baseline support as Trump, who won't run again, then it's the end. It's over. Like the US experiment has failed, which I think it probably largely already has failed. But this is the clearest signal that it's done. It's never coming back. The state that the Constitution was supposed to limit and supposed to hamper and supposed to keep somewhat shielded from growing and becoming this all-encompassing thing has become all-encompassing beyond any sense of beyond anything else. That's what I think that shows more than anything. Thoughts?
Fair. No, I think that's fair. But at the same time, you know, it is chain of command. She's the vice president, so I think it naturally goes to her. We've still got to have the Democratic National Candidate Convention. Be interesting because they don't technically vote as well. They have the super delegates, so it's not like that. We'll see. I don't think there's going to be any dramas if they've announced. Obviously, the people have gotten in the back and they've said, "Hey, she's the one." But I think that's one of the problems of chain of command. I think it was gonna be her, regardless.
I did have a video to show that was more lighthearted. We've already gone into a rant, and we're already ranting, so it's going to be a weird turn of pace now. But I think this video is important because it shows just how just how comical the whole thing is, right? She I'll just play it. It's only a few seconds long, but she's at a rally in Atlanta, Georgia, which is deep south. Big black population there and the big Democrat voting population among the black population there. And she puts on like this Southern black woman accent that she's never had to say the line. So I'll just play it because I mean it's almost too stupid to believe unless you hear it. But let's hear it.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're gonna do it again in 2024.
So that's it. Like it's a super short clip, but you helped us do it in 2020, and we gonna do it again in 2024.
Y'all gonna get it to us.
We gonna get that. Well, you know what? I feel what's the line? I'm burdened by what has been, and. What's that thing that she said like 100 times?
Yeah.
I'm burdened by
There's
anyway.
a video of it. Yeah.
I feel burdened by that. That's hard to. I mean, like to the level of disdain you need to have for people who you expect to support you, to put on a fake accent to go and talk to them, to pretend to be a part of their community when you have done nothing but try and dispel yourself from that community, except for when it's convenient to you, is just disgusting beyond belief. And I know we're reading a lot into just like an accent she threw on a few words, but like you're just a piece of shit. And that's without the fact that she is to the left of Joe Biden and to the left of most Democrats, and has, as we said before, Tulsi Gabbard pointed out, she kept people in jail. She kept people in jail for the use of cheap labor. That was the reason that she kept them in jail when she was a prosecutor. And she, all that shit that she's done. She's been a slave to the establishment the whole time. But we gonna do it again in 2024. You best believe. We taking down the white man.
But maybe that just shows that the black vote is gearing more towards Trump, because if she has to do that to get them on her side, or she believes she has to do that to get on her side, then it's like, yeah, I mean, that must be must be something pretty. I don't know. Maybe she's just doing it because it's like, hey, you'll fit in. But yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is that the voters neck and neck, and it's like, fuck, you have to really go out and get these guys on your side.
I think you've got to think that she loses more than she gains from that. Like you've got to think that would you not feel patronized if you were a black person attending her rally and you heard that? If you had,
Well, I wouldn't if that was the first time I ever heard her speak.
yeah, okay, that's
Yeah.
sure, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like, yeah, it's the equivalent of like when politicians try to like scull a beer or like I
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
eat a
When
hot dog
Albanese
from
comes
over.
out and he's in his tradie gear and
Yeah, like
yeah.
fuck off. And but even more so because I mean there's such a more distinct culture shift between, the black community in the US and like the political class than there is here, where Australia has much more of a sort of homogenous the laid back Aussie drink a beer, all that sort of thing. Like the black culture there is, and they have a different accent and stuff, whereas we all have the same accent. Like it is more um targetedly, pandering and patronizing. Um yeah. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how that goes for old Kamala.
Well, it's gonna be a lot more interesting to look at and cover. At least the podcasts will be a lot more better of quality because it's not just going to be Sleepy Joe and like, yeah, what can we say? The guy's just he's gone. Now it's going to be like, oh, look at the less stupid thing that she did now. Like, oh. So anyway, better podcasts.
Don't you think it's funny also, Joe Biden's still the president of the US? Like he's unfit
Yeah,
to run as a candidate, he's still the
yeah,
president, and we
yeah.
haven't seen him like at all. But that
Oh,
if you needed a clear indication that the ship runs itself in the US and the president doesn't actually get a say, is that there is no president. We haven't seen him, we haven't heard from him, he's done nothing. He's
mm,
probably incapacitated right now, but that thing's still chugging along. Um, and I mean, yeah, I think look, it'll be interesting for sure. Uh, I think what it does, the big change that it does is that now the debates, the inevitable debate that I'm assuming the Democrats will keep Kamala, and I'm assuming no one will shoot Trump within the next few months or weeks. Although that's a
well,
big,
that's a big if, mate.
that's a big if. But the debates are much more high stakes now, where Trump has to actually perform because Trump
Mm,
has to humiliate Kamala Harris in a way that he
yeah,
didn't have to do with Joe Biden because he thought
mm,
he had to in 2020 and made a misstep,
mm,
um, but realized by this year that all he had to do was let Joe Biden talk.
mm,
Whereas this time, he has to drill in and have those snappy comebacks and have things that he says to Kamala and make her like wind her up in a way that she'll say one of her circular, stupid rhetorical arguments. And that's how he wins this. Like he needs to now once again do something to win it. It's
Well,
not a foregone conclusion.
here's an idea. What if Trump gets RFK on the debate stage now to take the votes away from Kamala?
Well, that's a point that I've heard is that RFK more and more will take the votes from her.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does he take some votes from Trump as well? Maybe. It's almost hard to tell because like such a huge portion of Democratic voters were going to vote for Joe Biden despite the fact that he was a corpse.
Yeah, yeah.
They seem to be pretty hard stuck on their
Hmm.
candidate. Like
Yeah.
they're a more unmovable base. Whereas what Trump had won over when he had the majority were like the middle that were leaning towards him. If he brings RFK in, who is much more reasonable on a lot of things, does he lose that middle ground and Kamala keeps all of her, hard
Or maybe
stuff?
maybe RFK does his voice for a more southern accent.
We gonna win again in 2024. Yeah, also fuck having to listen to RFK. I'm sorry. There's a lot that I like about him. There's a lot I don't like,
Mm,
but there is a lot to like in RFK. The end of the world seems less imminent with RFK at the helm
mm.
because, he at least talks about what we're doing with Russia and Ukraine is stupid. But fuck, I don't want to have to listen to his voice for like an hour on it. It just sucks. Oh, anyway. Um I think that's about what we wanted to say. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, all good. All good in the hood.
All good in the hood. Now, look at that. You're talking like like Kamala and the black community now. It's rubbed off on you.
I'm gonna get on my Kamala game. You know?
Yeah.
Know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Well, that'll probably cancel this episode for cultural appropriation. That's not a tag that we've had yet before, the cultural
Oh, good.
appropriation ban.
Well, we'll
So,
get it. We'll get it.
let's see if we can get censored for that.
Yeah.
If you don't already, you can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. We're on Apple Podcasts as well. Thank you for watching. As always, we'd love to hear your comments if you've got anything to say, anything to add. But other than that, we will catch you next time.
Take it easy.